I am going to turn off the next mic in one moment, but I want to say thank you to Cindy Cline for coming, and thank you, Stanford, for, the kind of an education you gave her so that she'll come and share her travels with us. And your learning, setting up learning. Thank you for coming, and everybody enjoy.
Okay, hi everybody. It's great to be back.
I guess I could.
It's great to be back here. I was here last year. I think some of you were at my talk last year about the Jews of Japan, and I'm happy to be back here. Just 2 words about me. The most important thing is my father is Sanford Schwartz, a regular here. Another very important thing is that today would have been my mother's 90th birthday. So and it just was by chance. Nothing's by chance though. Her English birthday, but so I'm dedicating the talk today in memory of my mom, Faye Rochelle Shelley Schwartz, from Arezzo, but Esther Leova Abraham Levi. And just 2 words about me. I've gone through many career changes, or a few career changes in my life, but I currently work as a tour guide who leads kosher tours to different places around the world, kosher groups. And so I am not an expert on the topics that I present. I don't say myself as an expert, but they're topics that we encounter on our tours, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you. Okay, so today's topic is the Jews of Greece and North. Oh, and I live in Israel, and I'm here visiting for 9 days. So it was important for me to do this while I was here. We're going to talk today about the Jews of Greece and North Macedonia. And I think before we even start talking, just a little bit, we all know where Greece is, or what Greece is. Like, we've heard of Greece. Okay, North Macedonia, a lot of people haven't heard of. There is an area in Greece called Macedonia. In fact, a lot of the Jewish, I'm mainly going to be focusing on Thessaloniki or Salonika, which is in the area called Macedonia historically. North Macedonia is a different country that only exists under that name since 1992. We're going to see maps during the presentation. It was part of the former Yugoslavia, okay? And it went through different stages. Okay, so but there were, and there still are Jewish communities. Why isn't this working? Okay, so when was the first recorded Jewish presence in Greece, and how do we know? So we have the first actual physical proof that we have. They say that the Jews actually came to Greece with Alexander the Great, which would have been the 4th century BCE. But the first actual recorded Jewish presence in Greece, they found a gravestone in an area just north of Athens. And it's a funerary stone. And the inscription said, Moshos, the son of Moshe, the Jew. This gives them proof that there were Jews living in Greece at that time. Okay. Today, I actually saw this stone. It's on exhibit at the Jewish Museum of Greece in Athens. It's not a permanent home, but that's where it is. So that is the first physical proof. Right? Okay. The second physical proof that they found, has anyone here been to Greece? Okay. So were you in the Agora? The Agora was the ancient central marketplace where everybody gathered together, and you can go see the archaeological ruins. So actually, they only found this in 1977. Okay, but in 1977, they found they found what we're seeing here. What do we see here? Here, let me try to use this little thing. We see a menorah, and we see a lulav here. Okay. This was found on the wall. They found a synagogue in the ancient in the excavations at the ancient Agora in Athens, showing that Jews were there in the 3rd and 4th century. Okay, and this was only dug up in 1977. Today, this is in storage. It's not on display in the Museum of the Agora. You can't see it. You can see a copy of it also at the Jewish Museum of Greece. So you see the menorah here and the lulav here. So these are physical proof. Um, Now we're at a Jewish thing, and I shouldn't be talking about the New Testament, but then in the New Testament, they mention that Paul, at the beginning, Saul, who became Paul, was trying to convert the Jews because originally Christianity was a branch of Judaism. He was trying to spread the word amongst the Jews, and he was preaching in this synagogue. This synagogue is referenced. So this is the ancient roots of Jews in in Greece. But then we have, next slide. Oops, oh no, I skipped. Okay, then we have a 1300-year gap where there were no Jews in Athens. And even though now Athens is the largest population and Jewish population in Greece, for 1300 years, there were no Jews, and there's no proof of Jewish life. There are no synagogues, no physical proof that Jews were there. And the reason given is, Athens was a pretty pagan place, and the Jews, and Jews weren't, it wasn't such a favorable place for Jews to live. So we don't know of any synagogues from the 5th century until the 19th century. There may have been a small Jewish community, but there was no synagogue. Okay, I want to introduce another topic. What kind of Jews are there? So I already have a slide here, but what kind of Jews are there? When we divide Jews, not talking about Reform, Orthodox, Conservative, but Sephardim and Ashkenazi. We always think that there's Sephardim and Ashkenazi, but way before there were Sephardim and Ashkenazim, there were other types of Jews. And in Greece and also around the world today, we still have people who are called the Romanioti, or they call themselves the Romaioi Jews. And that is actually, who were these Jews? They were the Jews that settled there during the time of the Roman Empire. It means the Roman Jews. They were actually spoke a language called Yevanic. What does Yevanic sound like? You know what Yavan is in Hebrew? Greek, but it was Jewish Greek. It was like like Yiddish is a mixture of German and Hebrew. So Yevanic was a Jewish Greek language. God bless you. Okay, all right. So these Jews have roots in Greece over 2,000 years, and they still exist today. Where do they have communities today of the Romanioti Jews? Does anyone know? They have in Greece, there's one main community in a place called Ioannina, which is like on the west coast. It's falling off. West coast of Greece. And when you went right before you take off to the island of Corfu, there's a Jewish community there that's still purely Romanioti. There's in New York, there's a Romanioti synagogue that was from Jews who came from Ioannina, from this place in Greece, and they settled in New York, and they still have a community there. And there's also in Jerusalem today. Yes.
Some Jews went to Turkey, big population in Turkey, and they lived over there because my mother was born in Turkey.
And your mother probably had Sephardi roots, because we're going to get to that time also during the Ottoman period.
There were obviously my father came from Yemen.
Oh, from Yemen. Wow.
And they got married.
Interesting. Okay. So we have here the original Jews. Thank you. The original Jews that were in Greece were Romanioti Jews. They were Jews that came. They were there during what was known as the Eastern Roman Empire, or later becomes known as the Byzantine Empire. Okay. So they are Jews that have their own. Wait a second. Sorry. They have their own customs. They predate Ashkenazi and Sephardi, and they were there before there were any Sephardim there. Yes.
You answered my question.
Okay. Now I'm going to get usually I get to most of the things. Okay. And there were Romanioti Jews all over Greece. I'll mention some places that maybe some of you have heard of: Rhodes, Crete, Saloniki. I already said Ioannina, but many cities. They were all over Greece because the original Jews, both in the islands and on the mainland, were the Romanioti Jews. Okay. These are the Roman Jews. Okay. Jews from the Roman Empire. Okay. Okay, and the Jews of the Romaniotti Jews also spread through the Balkans, and they exist until today, but we'll get to what happens next. They came from they came from they were part of the Roman Empire, the Jews. I mean, originally they were exiled from Israel, but I'm saying, yeah, the original, but they became okay. So most of the talk about Greece, I'm going to focus on Thessaloniki, or a lot of you know it as Salonika. Okay, but the name is Thessaloniki, over 2,000 years of history, because the main Jewish community for most of the history of the Jews of Greece was based in Thessaloniki. Okay, and here it's also similar. When did the Jews come? The historians generally say that the first Jews came with Alexander the Great, so that they were there early, or that the arrived. Also, Jews arrived from Alexandria in 140 BCE. There are mentions in writings. Did anyone hear of the historian Josephus? Okay, so he mentions, he quotes correspondence from one of the Herods, not it was the grandson of the Herod that we know who built the Beit HaMikdash, between him and the Emperor Caligula, talking about Macedonia, which is the area in Thessaloniki. So we know that Jews lived there then, and we also hear again New Testament Acts. We hear about Paul trying to preach in the synagogue of Thessaloniki and getting kicked out because the Jews weren't interested. Okay, so we've got, and of course there was the Romaniotti Jewish community there that flourished under Jewish rule. And have you guys heard of Benjamin of Tudela? Okay, Benjamin of Tudela in the 12th century. No one's quite sure why he was traveling, but he traveled. And for those of you who don't know, and he wrote a book documenting the different Jewish communities he saw along his travels. And he says that in 1169, when he was there were around 500 Jews living in Thessaloniki. Okay, and later on, we have Jews arriving there from Central Europe, Sicily, Italy in the late Byzantine period. And here you can see, well, we're going to see it also in the next slide. There were many different communities that came to Thessaloniki. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. This is, I was privileged to travel with the Cantor's Choir from Jerusalem, and they performed a concert. This is one of the main synagogues in Thessaloniki. Well, to the middle of the week, it's not Shabbos. All right. Okay, so here is their ancient origins we spoke about. The Roman and Byzantine period. Okay, so here where somebody asked before. Then we have, when do the Spartans start coming, and other people as well? We have the Ottoman Empire, okay? And the Ottoman Empire was Turkey, Greece, the Balkans. It was, they took over, and they were very open to this was in the 1430s when the Ottoman conquest. And soon after, we have 1492, we have the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, 1537, the expulsion of the Jews from Portugal. And they really want, or these Jews, or some of them also were already people who had run away or had been Marranos, and, but because they were well connected, they knew languages, they were good in merchants, they wanted these Jews. And also what happened during the Ottoman Empire was they would resettle. They wanted a city to grow. They would move populations from one city to another. So that's how you have Jews spreading throughout the Ottoman Empire. You also have, so what happens? That is the Spartan. Okay, you have also, it's interesting, people don't know, Hungarian Jews also came. You had Jews from France, but it was really the Spartan that were the largest population and the most dominant population. And and around that time, between 1492 and the 1530s, around 20,000 Sephardi Jews settle in Thessaloniki. Okay, so that's like it's a big population. By 1550, there were 20,000 there, and they really were the dominant population. But at the same time, I want to show you, yeah, this slide and the slide before. This is in one of the synagogues. They list what they call the kahals. These are the lists of all the synagogues that used to exist. At Saloniki, at its peak, there were 30 different synagogues, and each one they called it a kahal. Does anyone know what that word comes from? Community. They at the beginning they didn't mix. So if you had and even if they were different Sephardi ones, if you had, you can see names here. Let me use this cute little thing here. Where do we see a name? Aragon. We see Aragon. That's it's from Spain. We see Old Sicilia. We see Puglia. That's from Italy. Lisbon. Okay, Calabria, also from Italy. Ashkenaz, the Ashkenazi community. Provincia, you have from province in Europe. You had all these different shoals, all these different communities, and at the beginning, each one had its own shoal, kept its own customs. They had one sort of big, umbrella Jewish organization, but each community kept its own character, and that was very, very typical for the Saloniki. What? So that was also interesting under the Ottoman Empire. Then that's when you want to talk about not just Jewish identity, but identity. A lot of the Jews, because they were Sephardi, a lot of them spoke Spanish, Portuguese, Ladino. In fact, at the Jewish Museum there, you see that people had often had businesses that weren't Jewish had business cards in Ladino, so when they were doing business with the Jews, they could understand. Um, so Ladino was definitely dominant with the Sephardi thing, but there were all different languages because under the Ottoman Empire, it was a very eclectic time. It was an empire. It wasn't, we also know a little bit about history, and I'm sure you know a lot, maybe even a lot more than I do. This is the time of the empires, but later on, when we move into the 19th century, it's more about nationhood and national identity. But back then, it was very international feeling in Greece, and especially in Thessaloniki. You heard many languages. You go to the marketplace and you'd hear many different languages, and people came from all over. So really, as I wrote here, it really was a microcosm of the Jewish diaspora. And really, the 16th and 17th centuries, after the influx of Sephardi Jews, it's really considered the Golden Age. Just to name drop one, I'm sure that many of you have heard of Yosef Karo, the Shulchan Aruch. There were many other big rabbis who spent some time at Thessaloniki. So it was a hub. It was a hub also for business, for Jewish community, and for Jewish scholarly activity as well. Yeah. So by the mid 17th century, the Jewish community numbered nearly 30,000 people, and a lot of things were closed on Shabbos. Okay, because I think around 60% of the city was Jewish. So and a lot of them were the ones who ran the businesses. So most things were closed on Shabbos.
Wasn't it fourth?
Okay. What?
Salani where it's closed on Shabbos.
Yeah, that's what I just said. That things were closed on Shabbos.
Yeah.
And for nearly 400 years, the Jews were the city's largest ethnic group. Okay, and they were more than the Muslims, more than the Christians. Okay. All right. So I don't expect you to know who this is. I wouldn't know who it was if I didn't make the slide myself. But I'm sure. Does anyone know who it is? I didn't say that. I'm seeing if anyone knows. Has anyone heard of Shabtai Tzvi?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he came from Turkey, but he also spent time in Saloniki, and it was part of the Ottoman Empire. That was, here I wrote here, crisis and recovery. There were a lot of people who followed him. He was a false messiah, okay, who ended up under pressure from the government converting to Islam. But then his followers, who were known as the gunmen, and apparently they exist until this day, were keeping their Judaism secretly, almost like Marano Muslims. So, but that crisis really, it weakened the Jewish community. Um, it, it had a big effect on them. And after that, you had them actually being more united and less having the small communities because they had this more of a need for unity. Okay. Let's Okay, so then when you move into the 19th and 20th century, I'm jumping here, you have a lot of, this is the industrial age, modernity, and the Jews, of course, are part of this. So you have, railways, the modern port, electric streetcars, expanded trade, um, Jewish schools. You guys heard of the Alliance? I'm probably not saying it so well. Alliance, yes. My French, but it was a French school system, Jewish school system that was all over a lot in a lot of Muslim countries, and where they also had a very strong secular education, and it was considered a lot of people. If you went to Alliance, you could then go to university in France, the Sorbonne. It was considered a very high level school. This is part of modernization. Alliance schools introduced them, becomes more European. This is a period of time where the Ladino culture is flourishing. Okay, we're still under Ottoman rule, and there's lots of Jewish newspapers, and there's a lot of prominent Jewish families. In fact, there's a family known as the Modiano. There's a lot of Jewish prominent families, but one, the Modiano family, who are well known, and to this day, the main market there is called the Modiano Market. So a lot of things there. When you walk around, people don't even realize there's all these Jewish names, and they don't even know you're going to the Modiano market. People don't realize that's the Jewish family that started that market. During this period of time, Jabotinsky and Ben Gurion both went to Saloniki. They went there. Why did they go there? Um, they went there to sort of to check out, because this was a place, it was considered a Jewish city because it was the majority Jewish, and where Jews were working in everything from blue collar jobs to to educated jobs. And for them as Zionists, it was a model for the future of the state of Israel. So just to quote, Jabotinsky called it the most Jewish city in the world. This was in 1909. He says that. Um, and he was really struck by its large, vibrant Jewish community. And he described it as a model for Jewish urban life. That was Jabotinsky. Ben Gurion, who, by the way, never got a higher education, just shows you can be prime minister and not have any academic degrees. But he was supposed to study law during the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, in Istanbul, and he spent some time in Thessaloniki, and he describes Thessaloniki as a Jewish labor city, the only one in the world. And then he writes, the Jews are capable of all kinds of work. And he really this was pre-World War I. He's there, that was in 1911, really, Arab, as we say in Hebrew, Arab World War I, right before World War I. He studied its politically active Jewish working class, and this experience in Thessaloniki, it influenced his later Zionist and labor ideology. Okay, and then
How many Jews were there?
what?
How many Jews were there?
There were at that point, we're talking around 30,000 plus. Okay, but before the Holocaust, we're going to get there, it gets to as many as 60,000. Okay. Anyway, now in this is interesting because they're in Greece the whole time. We're thinking they're in Greece, but Greece isn't Greece. Greece is the Ottoman Empire. And then in it is Greece, but it's part of the Ottoman Empire, and it doesn't have a Greek flavor. In 1912, Greece gets its independence, becomes the Greek nation state. And then all of a sudden, it's making a transition from being this multi-ethnic empire to a nationalistic state. And where do the Jews, fit in here? But at the beginning, they thought they were going to have it was going to be okay, that they had religious autonomy under the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, because it was a Muslim state, they were what's called a dhimmi status. Have you heard that before? That, they're considered like second-class citizens, but they weren't really treated that way. They had their own courts. They had their own religious courts, their own, community institutions, and they were pretty allowed to run things themselves. Under the Greek government, they they still were semi-independent, but the Greek government said, wait, you can have your Jewish schools, your Jewish institutions, but it's considered under supervision. It's not autonomous. It's considered part of the government system. And they had some adjustments. At this point, 1912, there are 61,000 Jews. Okay, they're the largest group in the city. There's around 45,000 Muslims at this time, and 40,000 who are Greek. So there are more Jews than Greeks there, and there are 10,000 from other origins. Okay. They get what's called a guarantee of equality from the Greek government, meaning legal equality as citizens, but yeah. Anyway, but and they think things are going to be good. And then something they couldn't predict happens. There was the Great Fire of 1917, and I think it affected the Jewish neighborhoods more than any other neighborhoods. And I said a minute ago that there were 61,000 Jews. 53,000 Jews are left homeless from this fire. Homes, businesses. So it's, it's like, it was a big hit.
They don't have fire bombs.
And and after that, they didn't get as much help from the government to rebuild their homes as they could, and it weakens the community. And I'm skipping a little bit, and I'm okay, and I'm skipping towards World War II and the Holocaust. But we have this background of the Jews being from all over, becoming a more of a Sephardic community, coming under Greek rule, and then this fire that sort of weakens their status to a certain extent, and then we come to World War II. And in World War II, in 1941, there was the Axis, April of 1941, there's the Axis occupation. And what I want to show you here is basically the Germans, the Italians, and the Bulgarians divided up Greece. So everything that is red, it was under German occupation. So you see that this Thessaloniki that's here in the north is under German occupation. Athens is under German occupation, and in some of the islands, anything that is in, I don't know what this color is, gold, what do we want to call it? This is Italian occupation, but it also, after September of 1943, it also becomes German. And the green areas are Bulgarian. We're going to talk about Bulgaria more when we get to North Macedonia. But this is how the rule was divided up. Okay. All right. So before I talk about the trains and what happened then in the Holocaust, so the occupation starts already April 1941. In from July to December 1942, they had roundups of Jewish men between the ages of 18 and 45 at one of the main squares, the Alphatheria Square, and where they were meant to be sent to forced labor. They tell the community that if they pay them a ransom of 2.5 billion drachmas, which is equivalent approximately to $100 million in today's money, they tell them that we won't send them to the forced labor camps. What do you think happened? They took the money and they sent them anyway.
Oh,
Okay. And
send them anyway.
they took the money from the community, which weakened the community. They confiscated Jewish business. They destroyed the Jewish cemetery, and basically, they really, really, hit the Jewish community hard. This is before the transport. So this is, the beginning. And of course, they're wearing the yellow star and all the, laws and rules are being put into place, and they're being systematically stripped of their livelihoods and their property. And yeah, they just, they took the money and ran. So what did this ransom really do? It bankrupted the community, it weakened them financially. And then also the Jewish institutions, that for a short while, they still were theoretically still independent. They weren't able to support the poor. They didn't have, money to organize escape networks. They weakened them on many, many levels. Okay. So this is actually, you can see some of the people from the group I took. This today, you can go visit. It's not the actual cars that they use, but you can go to where the trains left.
What is this here behind on the right side of the track? What on this second one here? All these
Sure.
round barrels. there.
This is just, it has nothing to do with the Holocaust.
What is that?
It has nothing to do with the Holocaust. This is just,
What is it?
I think it's like, it might be oil tanks. I'm not sure. It's like
Barrel.
barrels, yeah, like
Like
oil.
barrel.
Yeah,
Oil? Oh,
okay. Not so significant. This is the site. We go to the site where they were transported. The transport started on March 15th of 1943. There were 18 transports. Around 45,000, 46,000 Jews from Thessaloniki were transported. They were deceived. They were told when they arrived at the trains that they were being resettled. And also they had a history of being resettled. When the Ottoman Empire resettled, it was okay. Sometimes it was good for them. Now it was the German occupation, they're being resettled. I don't know if they thought it was going to be good, but they didn't know that they were being sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau. So they sent 18 transports to Auschwitz-Birkenau starting in March of 1943. They're transported in freight wagons that aren't meant for people. There's 2,000 to 3,000 in each convoy. And it's also, you realize that Greece is very, very far from Auschwitz. So it was 6 to 9 days of this arduous journey that many died along the way. And, not that it was any better coming from Eastern Europe, but they had a longer journey from Greece. And this is where I actually just want to say, because what I wanted to say in the introduction was a lot of people don't know about the Jewish communities of Greece and North Macedonia. They don't know about that the Holocaust affected them. So and I find it part of my mission is to tell this story because a lot of us don't know. And part of the reason why a lot of people don't know is there weren't that many survivors. And there's not that many people talking about it as because it was a smaller population to begin with. And we have more survivors from Eastern Europe. We know more about that part of the Holocaust, but this chapter of the Holocaust, we know less of. On arrival, sorry.
I just wanted to say that at the Illinois Holocaust Museum, they they interviewed people that were on trains and ended up in Auschwitz. And one of the survivors said he felt so sorry for the Jews of Corfu because they didn't understand anything that the Nazis were saying.
So I'm glad you brought up that point. They also say about the Jews that came from Greece, the Jews who came from other European countries, they often had a language. A lot of them knew German, or they knew there were languages that they could communicate. The Jews who came from Greece, they knew Ladino, they might know some Greek, they might know some Turkish. I'm not saying, who had a harder time, but it did compound because they exactly as you said, they didn't know what was flying. They really didn't understand what was going on. So of all of these transports, around 76% of them were immediately gassed upon arrival in Auschwitz-Birkenau. Only around 500 of this 46,000 escaped, and most of them joined the partisans in the mountains, the forests. Here's the point in my notes. The many spoke Ladino and they had a language barrier in the camps. Um, there are no surviving deportation lists. So what we know about the who was sent, we know from fragmentary records, and there's also, I can't remember his name, but there was a guy who was in the Sonderkommando, those for those who worked in the crematorium. And this guy who buried bottles filled with his diary of he wrote an account of what happened in Auschwitz, and they found it later on, so they know certain things from him. Got his name, it's Marcel something. There were, after these deportations, going along with what you said, there were deportations from Rhodes and Corfu, and in total there were around 55,000 Greek Jews in total deported to Auschwitz. From Thessaloniki after the war, there's under 2,000 survivors. So we said there were 61,000 before the war. After the war, there's 1,950 survivors in Thessaloniki. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Oh, wait. Okay. Have any of you heard of I don't know, blanking out. Yehuda Poliker. He is a famous Israeli singer. Actually, when I made Aliyah in the 80s, and when I was just starting to study at Bar Ilan University, he had just come out with an album because he's a descendant of Greek Holocaust survivors. He's from Israel, but his parents were from Greece, from Thessaloniki. And I'll just play you a little bit of the song. It's in Greek with Hebrew subtitles. I was going to give you English, but we'll just get a bit of the vibe. But basically, the song is describing their time during the Holocaust and also then coming back to Thessaloniki after everything that they went through. So we'll just play a little bit of it. What is it? So I play it. I'll do it manually. Oops, I went to do. Another border, another eternity. Wait for me, Saloniki. We're very far from Greece. Wait for me, Saloniki. My blood is frozen, my heart stops in the snow of Germany. I've lost everyone there in the camp in Poland. Pale faces, shells of come to cry in your streets. Freedom's come, a new spring. I'm close to you. Like a faded shadow in a weak body, I'll come to your gate. If we don't have time, I'll move the next slide. This is the monument to the Holocaust that today, remember I mentioned that main square where they round up the men to deport to the work camps. They didn't allow it there for many, many years. And it was like far on the outskirts. There was no, they didn't, the Greek authorities didn't allow a monument to the Holocaust to be there. It was installed, and it was also only installed in 1997. Okay. It was only moved in 2006 when the president of the state of Israel, Moshe Katsav, came to visit, and then they moved it to the main square, and it's been there ever since, but it is regularly vandalized. Yeah.
And do you feel the reason for it taking 5 decades to build this, was it more of the culture Greece not wanting to admit they did anything wrong, or Greece not wanting to promote Jewish life?
It's a very good question. So I don't, when you say Greece doing something wrong, there are countries where the locals actually, they were the ones who were like the outstretched arm of the Germans. You didn't have that in Greece, okay? Um, but I think it was anti-Semitism and also a denial of a denial of the time, even if they're not feeling guilty, but a denial of that time and anti-Semitism, not making it
A bit of
a
both.
central thing. This is also, it's a very central area. It's like the downtown touristy area. You don't want a Holocaust monument there, you know, it's pretty depressing. But they moved it there in 2006, and it's there. And if you just look at it, what the artist was doing here, I don't know if you can see, it's hard to see.
Looks like
It's supposed to look like flames, but it's also bodies that are like intertwined. It's sort of morbid, but you can see, I think you can count 7 heads to the 7 flames. Okay. And the artist who created this monument, he actually was a Holocaust survivor, not a Greek survivor. I think was from Bulgaria, Yugoslavian. Nandor Gild was his name, but he created this monument. His whole family was murdered in Auschwitz. He also had created other monuments for Mauthausen and Dachau.
Is that located in Israel?
No. This is in Thessaloniki, where they in the exact location where they rounded up the Jews, but it's only been it was only made in 97, and it's only been in that location since 2006. Okay. Okay, the Jews of Thessaloniki after the war until today. This was also when I was with the group of the cantors. This is with the community. You can see also, see how the woman's dressed, and I'm not saying in a judgmental way. Today there's a community there. They're more traditional than Orthodox. They still have the synagogue, and this is taking place in the synagogue, presenting him with a present, you know, for coming to perform for them at this special event. But there is still a community today. There are less than 1,000 Jews today in Thessaloniki. So at their peak, it was 61,000. There's less than 1,000 today. And in all of Greece altogether, including anywhere, I mean, it's mainly in Athens today, and in a few other places, there's 5,000 Jews in total. And even though the Jewish community at Thessaloniki is just like it's not even a shadow. It's less than a shadow of what it once was. It's still considered the symbol of Spartan heritage, of Jewish scholarship, of Ladino culture, and a milestone in the history of the Jews in Greece. Okay, we're going to move on now. We have a little bit of time to North Macedonia. I almost didn't show you North Macedonia because I'm getting too into the Greece part, but I think it's important, so a lot of people don't even know. So I'm showing you North Macedonia today. It's only been a country since 1992, as part of the former Yugoslavian Republic. But you can see where it is. It borders on Bulgaria, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, and it's just northwest of Greece. Okay, just so you know today. But I want to show you what the map was during World War II. Well, we'll get to it. I purposely put this picture this way. Okay, this is the only shoal left in of North Macedonia. It's a small room in the Jewish Community Center, and I purposely showed it empty because there are no services there anymore. Very rarely. There's no rabbi there. The community, I think they call the shoal reform, but I don't know if they really know what reform is. I think reform organizations of the states gave them money. They hardly ever have services there. They're depending on who you ask and how you count. There's anywhere between 74 and 250 people in the Jewish community left today. And why do I say? There are probably in 2021, they actually did a census where people declared their religion, I think the local census, and 74 Jews. But then when they say the Jewish community is 250. because people who have Jewish heritage, not always from their mother, say they're Jewish, people who are married to non-Jews and then their children are not so Jewish. There's people who have a connection to the Jewish community and they're part of the Jewish community. In fact, I've spoken to several of them. You got to be careful because they consider themselves. I think they know they're not exactly Jewish, but they're part of the Jewish community. That's how they define themselves. So up to 250 people are part of the Jewish community, but it is not really active. I think around the time of the high holidays, and I think every once in a while on a Shabbos they have a get together. But it really is. I wanted to show it empty because it really is empty most of the time. Though the groups, so I was like, when we go there with groups, they have kosher Sefer Torahs. We used it we used the synagogue to daven there, and both on Shabbos and during the week for mincha. I've used it with my groups, but yeah, the community doesn't make much use of the synagogue. Yeah.
So about 6 years ago now, which sounds like forever, it's peak COVID, CMC can't host meetings like this regularly.
Yeah.
To keep our community going, we did a 90-minute weekly Zoom series called Touring the Jewish World. People could sign on to Zoom, and we would have an interview with a different Chabad rabbi globally.
Mhm.
We did an episode for North Macedonia. If there is a Chabad house, how do they not have?
There is no Chabad in North Macedonia. I don't know if there was then.
Yeah.
There are Chabads in other places in the Balkans, and sometimes those rabbis will go a weekend here, a weekend there. But as far as I know, there's definitely no Chabad there now. I don't think there has been a Chabad in North Macedonia.
We
But I'll
definitely
check
have the
that.
North Macedonia video, and it's from 5, 6 years ago.
I'm going to check that because there's definitely no Chabad now.
Okay.
And it might have been, there is in Albania, and that's relatively new. There is in Serbia, there are Chabads in nearby countries, in Bulgaria, but again, I've only been going there for the past couple of years, so I don't know. But as far as I know, and if there was a Chabad, it hasn't had a big impact on the community. Okay. So back to the ancient Jewish presence. I was actually here. There is an ancient archaeological excavation where they found a synagogue. And what's funny is how things don't change. This is called it was found in a synagogue that was built in 165 today it's an archaeological site called Stobia. It's an ancient city. It's called the Polycharmus dedication. Basically, it's talks here about the benefactor and all the money he gave to build the synagogue complex. See, nothing changes. He sponsored the prayer hall, the dining room, and the courtyard. Okay, so nothing changes. Okay, this isn't on display at that site. They've taken away, and it's in the museum of the city of Skopje. So I saw where the synagogue was, but I didn't get to see this. This is proof that the Jews date back. They also say the Jews, the same as that they were there since Roman times, and there's the letter from Herod III to Caligula, the same thing. That what I just told you, it's that this wealthy guy gave money to build. It's called the Polycharmus because that was his name. His name was Tiberius Polycharmus, a nice Jewish name. Okay, just like my name's Cindy. Jews. It's a plaque for the donor's plaque. Okay, but now we're gonna move already past I'm fast forwarding because I knew that I was gonna have a time issue. And there's also that from the ancient proof that there have been Jews there for a long time to Holocaust times. So we can see now the map. Remember I told you that Bulgaria, Italy, and Germany sort of divided up Greece and the Balkans. So you can see here, before I showed you the map of what was North Macedonia, I actually want to go back to that slide. Let's just look at that slide. Here, let's see that we have, let's see, it's important that we see Skopje, that's the capital. Shtip, there was a Jewish community. Bitola, which was then known as Monastir. Those were the three main Jewish communities. Now let's fast forward. And now we're in We're in Bulgaria. Now, the dark green was Bulgaria pre and post-war, but during the war, you have Skopje, Shnip, Bitola, those cities that I just showed you were all under Bulgarian rule. Okay, and it's okay.
Also, a lot of Jews lived in Izmir.
Izmir in Turkey, yeah.
Yeah.
So, believe it or not, in North Macedonia, they are considered the fourth Holocaust. They call it fourth Holocaust center. There's a name for it in the world. You have Washington, you have Berlin. Wait, I'm forgetting one. Oh, Yad Vashem in Israel, and no, Skopje said there. I'll tell you in a sec. And you have in Skopje. Those are the four Jewish Holocaust commemorative museums that are government funded, and it's a huge place. Okay, of a community that was under 8,000 people, but that 98% were killed. And why is it so huge? Because they got money after the war, they got reparations, but there were no, and it was supposed to go to the children of, but there were no children. So they used that money to build this center, and it's a government center. And you can see here, this is the memorial. They call it the Children's Memorial in front. It's the, you can see it's showing them right before the transport, which we're going to discuss in a second. It also represents the 1.5 million children killed in total, but there were of the 7,244 people killed from North Macedonia, over 2,000 were children. So they dedicate that. Now, this is
The Nazis come into Greece, or the Greek people were so anti-Semitic?
no, this was Bulgarian occupation, but they were part of the Axis forces.
Was the transport?
The Bulgarians, and I'm not gonna, it's complicated history because maybe some of you are well read, and the Bulgarians claimed that they never sent their people to the camps, and that's not true. They sent the Jews in their occupied areas, both in North Macedonia and in the areas of Greece known as Thrace and Eastern Macedonia. They sent around 11,000 Jews, and they were all
The
exterminated.
general population.
But they didn't touch their own Jews, and they sort of, it's not a misnomer, that's not the right word, it's a falsehood that they didn't send Jews. They had a quota to meet after the Wannsee conference. Yeah, the Bulgarians were together, in the Axis forces with the Nazis. Now, this picture here, this is a real picture. It's not such good quality, and you can see my colleague is actually holding it. You can see her fingers. This is a copy of the picture. This is actually, and you're going to see the next picture. They gathered the Jews of North Macedonia together on March 11th. 1943, similar date to what was happening in Greece. To send that they were all sent to Treblinka. Okay, and in the meantime, it was anywhere from a week to like 2.5 weeks, because there were 3 main transports. They were kept in a transit camp, which was actually inside of a tobacco factory. That's still an active tobacco factory today. It still exists. But the area that they used for this transit camp, they've left empty, and you can't usually just go visit it, but if a group organizes in advance, you can go visit, and you see how they were, this is inside their barracks. You see how they're just, piled on top of one another. This is it today. That's my colleague. But this is that same space. This is that same exact space. That's this, then, this now. Okay, and here, it's interesting, it's, they have it in the local Macedonian language, in the Cyrillic alphabet, and they have in Hebrew. They put it on, when they had a ceremony, also March 11th. March 11th is the day that they It's like their Holocaust Memorial Day because that's the day of the transport. They only put this up in 2004, but I'll read and translate what it says in Hebrew. I can't read Macedonian. And it's not 100% accurate, but Zecher LeKorban shall שבעת אלפים 200 יהודי מקדוניה שנהרגו בשואה עובדי מפעל TKS. In memory of the 7,200 Jews of Macedonia who were killed in the Holocaust, workers of the TKS factory. They weren't workers of the TKS factory, and it wasn't even called, back then it was called the Monopol factory. Today the factory is TKS, but they put this monument and it's there. And also you can't always, unless you get special permission to go inside, you can, almost no one sees this monument. A lot of people, I have colleagues that didn't even know it existed, this monument. You need to like know the right people to be able to find it. It's somewhere on the grounds of the factory. So we were there with our group. And I just want to end I have a few more minutes, not very many. I wanted to talk about just a couple, two figures. The one who didn't really survive and one who did survive. It got cut off for some reason, but that's Estrella Mara Ovadia, 1922 to 1944. She actually didn't reach her 22nd birthday. She was 21. She, when the Axis powers invaded, she joined the local partisans, and the partisans weren't just Jews. It was the Yugoslavian partisans fighting against the Bulgarians. It was Jews and non-Jews together. It was rebelling against the Bulgarian occupation. But because she was part of the partisans, she was like, in hiding out in a forest somewhere. She was not rounded up, but she does get killed in 1944 when they try to attack the Bulgarian police outpost, and then she gets killed. So and what's amazing is she was declared in the 1950s by Tito. She was declared a Bulgarian national hero. She was the first woman to actually become Yugoslavian, excuse me, because it was against the Bulgarians, Yugoslavian national heroine. And there are schools and all sorts of things named after her. And she's considered a national hero. I wish you could see the cute little kids singing it, but there's a nursery school named after her, and it's a video of the choir of the nursery school singing this song. North Macedonian non-Jewish children singing the song of this heroine, Estrella Mara. Her name was Esther, and Mara was her code name as the partisans. Do I have time? I'm going to try to squeeze in. I have 2 more slides. So I want to just tell the story of Dr. Chaim Abravanel. So what I didn't tell you is that when they did the transport of almost all the Jews, 98% of the Jews of North Macedonia, there were people that got out. If you had foreign papers, Spanish citizens, Italian citizens, you could get out, but also doctors and pharmacists. They needed that. And Dr. Abravanel was actually, before the occupation, he was in the Yugoslavian army as a doctor, and also in his civilian career, he saved many people from typhus. So he was a very prominent doctor. Can I have like 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
2 more, okay, thank you. Really just 2. He was a prominent doctor, so he was not sent. And after the war, he and his wife were the only Jews living in the city of Monastir, which is today known as Bitala, which had the biggest Jewish community before the war. Now, no, we're in North Macedonia now, which was part of the former Yugoslavia. His story is amazing. He survived, and in fact, there's a hospital named after him in North Macedonia today. They have Bravanel, can you believe it? The Bravanel thing. But in 1963, a terrible tragedy happened. He had survived. His children had, because they saved his whole family. It wasn't just him, his wife, his children. He had 2 children, and then they brought grandchildren into the world. So his granddaughter His name is Shelley. Oh, that's so wow. That's crazy that I'm ending with this. This is in my mom's birthday. My mom's name was Shelley. I couldn't even think about this. But his granddaughter, whose name actually is Shelley, she's still alive, was staying with her grandparents in Monastery for the weekend, and her family lived in Skopje. In Skopje, there was still a Jewish community, and sure, her aunt and her uncle and her mother and father, that weekend there was a earthquake. It was very high on the Richter scale, and their house collapsed. And they all survived the Holocaust, and they were all killed.
Oh,
And she survived because she was by her grandparents. That tragedy put the family through a loop, and the family then made Aliyah to Israel, to Bat Yam. The grandfather was a doctor, I think, pretty much until soon before he passed away at like an HMO, a Kupat Cholim in Israel. And the daughter grew up, she's a big professor at Bar Ilan, and she's now a colleague of mine. I'm actually working with her. She is trying to instate, this is her, Shelley, Shelley Raphael Levy drummer. She organizes, like she's trying, it's to get people more aware of the Jews of North Macedonia and Greece, and to have March of the Living type trips happening around March 11th, because that's the day that they commemorate every year. Anyway, I just wanted to end with that, and I thank you very much for listening. I hope it was interesting. And you were my guinea pigs. We don't really have time for questions or criticism, but if anyone wants to tell me on the side what I did wrong, I'm very happy to learn for the future. But I think I more or less fit into the time frame. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice.